Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 1 of the Match+Book series on the EBPL podcast. My name is Paul. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at EBPL. If you're just joining us for the first time, Match+Book series, what we like to do is match people with specific genres of literature or film and certain topics. Sometimes that could be broad. Sometimes we get really specific. I like to do a little bit of both and field your questions in both directions, so that sometimes it's broad, sometimes it's like, oh wow, I didn't know this really niche thing even existed, and here's some items you might like on this topic. So I like to do it in all directions and pull all of these questions from our Match+Book form that is on the library's website. You could find that if you hover over Explore on our homepage and then follow the subheading to adult reading, you'll see an item that says EBPL Match+Book. So that is where you can find this. I generally try to answer people's questions promptly and give a good amount of recommendations for something they might like. A few weeks ago, I received a question that was kind of tailor-made for this time of year. Somebody sent in something about horror movie recommendations. Now, I am going to try to transition this to literature in some ways as well. But yeah, we're going to go through some horror movie recommendations and find some things. I'm going to do this also, some contemporary, some older ones, some ones that maybe we have the DVD of, some that maybe are on our streaming platforms. So all different ways, I'll try to give you something you might like. So hopefully the diversity and variety of choices, something will ping your interest. So the first one I'd like to recommend is the Crucible. Now, I was scouring our catalog for it, and it turns out we don't have a DVD of the Crucible, which I was shocked to learn. But we do have the Arthur Miller play that the film is based on. I've read the play as well. It's also great. It's very short if you want a nice quick read on something in this area. But the film is great as well. Came out in 96, and if you've never read or watched The Crucible, it concerns the Salem witch trials. And what it does is it traces the origin of the trials, of the accusations against people that they said were witches, and tries to basically get a sense of how this hysteria came into being and how it started as such a minor thing in the community and really swelled from there to really take over the town of Salem, which at the time was a massive community in New England. And it shows how people can be caught up in the hysteria and people are brought into it who are on the fringes. They have seemingly nothing to do with it, but once they're implicated, there's really no way to extricate themselves from this situation. And Arthur Miller wrote The Crucible to show the timelessness of mass hysteria and false accusations and how they carry such weight, because he, at the time in the 1950s, was accused of being a communist. This is when the whole Red Scare was going on, McCarthyism, and to show how 300 years later, very little has changed, and history repeats itself if we don't learn from our lessons, and how we are not learning from those. So that's why the play was great at the time, specifically in the 1950s when he wrote it about McCarthyism, but also the film as well does a great job of showing this and shows the groundswell of movement from really the tiniest thing to just an entire takeover of a community. Really wonderful. And I really think the horror of something like that derives from how you might just be going about your daily life and doing everything correctly and on the up and up, and then all of a sudden one day you are accused of this kind of thing, and if you don't repent, then, well, something that really translates very well into the film itself would be the setting and how it's done, how it feels period appropriate. They reconstructed all the housing. All the communities are surrounded by this brush and woods that tower out of the ground and make it feel kind of claustrophobic. And that way it's very well done. It provides a sense of helplessness to the situation, and it really serves to put you directly into the characters' lives and how they're feeling at the time. So definitely recommend that one. So the next thing I would like to talk about is The Haunting of Hill House. The Haunting of Hill House is interesting in that it was at first a Shirley Jackson novel that came out in 1959. So like a gothic horror novel about a doctor who entices people into coming to a historic mansion to try to prove the existence of supernatural elements and paranormal events. And what's great about that is, in the same way that the Crucible is a timeless tale into itself, this is also a timeless story in that humans are always searching for and pondering the actual existence of paranormal phenomena. So it's really a timeless thing that we're always searching for as a species. And I think it's great. And what shows the timelessness of it is that, I mean, I'm just looking at our catalog itself. I type in Haunting of Hill House. We have the original book, which is amazing. I've read it a few times. Excellent book. We have a film that came out in 1989 based on the book called The Haunting. And then there's The Haunting of Hill House, which came out a few years ago as a Netflix series. We also have that as a DVD as well. And I watched that one too. And it updates the story very well in that instead of in the original book, we're looking through the lens of an outsider who's coming to the house. But in this, we see the story of somebody who grew up in the house, then writes a story about the house and all the paranormal phenomenon and how that impacted his family's life. And there's a big debate between him and his siblings about what's real, what's not, what's embellished. So they really tried to get to the heart of that. And it ends up being a really wonderful family story, as well as a story about seeking this evidence of supernatural events. This is just one of those timeless tales that people want to remake and really tweak to show how it could be replicated over and over again with different characters, different themes, but generally the same story, just done in different ways. And I think that proves how much we really cling to these stories, whether we believe in them or not. Humans definitely have a fascination with this kind of thing. My viewpoint on this is that just a few weeks ago, I believe, there was a novel release called A Haunting on the Hill by Elizabeth Hand. And this is yet another update of The Haunting of Hill House. And it was written with the permission of the Shirley Jackson estate. They endorsed the publication of this novel because they really believed in this kind of update on the story. And it concerns a woman who's a struggling playwright. And basically this house, she just kind of happens upon it, decides to rent it, and is very taken in and gathers up all her friends, and they rent it out for a week, and they're having a great time at first. Obviously, things go awry, but she originally uses it as inspiration for what she hopes is going to be a best-selling play. But she finds that the house, they have other ideas, and the whole aliveness of the house and how that is kind of a constant through all of the adaptations on this book. It's really wonderfully well done. I love that element to it. The house has a mind of its own. It's controlling the characters in some ways. It's really great. So definitely check out any number of those options on The Haunting of Hill House. The last film I wanted to discuss today is called Train to Busan. This is a South Korean horror film. And while we don't have the DVD, it is available on our streaming platforms, Canopy and Hoopla. Both of those you could access through our website if you're interested. Canopy has tons of different art films, documentaries, a lot of niche things. Hoopla has films. It also has television shows, ebooks, comics. Canopy is a little bit more specific to films, but this particular film is streaming on both platforms. So choose whichever one you want to watch it on. But it concerns a martial law that is declared when a mysterious viral outbreak occurs in Korea, pushing them into a state of emergency. And we follow characters on an express train to Busan, a city in Korea that has successfully fended off this outbreak. And all of the characters are really fighting for their own survival. And there's a lot of zombie tropes and elements going on here. And while I think I'd be the first to say I'm not really into zombie films in any way, For some reason, this film was the one that I was able to overlook those elements and just really enjoy. It's just a really well-paced, well-shot, beautiful choreography in all of the action elements. So if you're really just a fan of action movies in general, I would guess you'd really like this because it's all very well done. So it's really piling on zombies on top of those elements. And something I really like about how the zombies are done in this is that they're fast. They turn from humans to zombies very quickly, which I like because it mirrors how a virus can spread so quickly through a group of people. So you'll see the nicest people just go from pleasant, ordinary to manic and rabid flesh eaters in just a few seconds. And the way it's done in the film is very interesting to see that play out in real time. Also interesting is the whole nature of these people packed into a train car. So you're with a finite group of people. We see how this is an end of the world scenario, apocalyptic somewhat scenario that isn't just every person for themselves. And if the group wants to survive, they have to also rely on each other as well. So there's these elements of when to let people go, when to turn against people, when to stick together, that I feel like it makes a lot of sense and really gets to the heart of how we interact with each other in normal day-to-day lives and how we see each other and interact with each other, care for each other. And in times of crisis, what would that actually look like? So very well done as well. And something that really elevates what could be just a dumb horror zombie movie into something that has these elements of class consciousness and togetherness. So those are my recommendations for horror films to check out. Obviously, that spawned into a whole discussion of different plays, literature. If any of those interest you, check it out. I'd like to say thank you to Melissa Hosick for editing this episode. And thank you all for listening. Check back in with new episodes of the Match+Book series every 2 weeks. Thank you.